Good evening. I call this regular board meeting to order at 5 p.m. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call. All directors are present. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam President, I have a slight change to the agenda tonight. This is an item that came to the attention of the district after the agenda was posted, and this is an item of urgency, and this is going to be item 6D, and this is the acceptance of the draft capital plan that was presented last night at the special board workshop.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Do I have a motion to approve with the changes?
I'll move the item with the changes.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The agenda is approved. Moving on to public comment. We have no members of the public in person and no members online. So we will move on to community reports, and in person, we have Sheriff.
Hi, I'm Sergeant Trevor Mlinzik. I just took over for Sergeant Rios as of a couple weeks ago, so you'll be seeing me for foreseen coming time. The updated stats right now for the last month for the city of Phelan, or town of Phelan, however you guys call it. Total of 709 calls for service. Out of those 709, only 78 DRs were pulled, meaning reports. The top 3 calls for service were information calls, were mostly information calls or medical calls. Someone was ill and it's for medical personnel. The second one is wireless 911 calls. And the third is follow-ups. And basically follow-up is either a deputy puts himself out on follow-up or someone's calling in reference a call for service they had and they just want some follow-up questions for. I know you guys got the top 3, but just to give you even further on, number 4 was traffic stops. That's being our officers being proactive out there on the streets, making traffic stops. And after that was welfare checks, which is generally well-being of other family members of someone that lives out of state or checking on their loved ones. For Piñon Hills, there was 348 calls for service. Out of those, there was 24 DRs pulled. Again, reports. The top one, again, is information calls, and that was 88. Second one was wireless 911 calls, 26, and that one, the top 3, is welfare checks. And after that, there's only 13 calls, and that, again, was traffic stops. So that's what I have for the reports on that. Any other questions from me?
Any questions? No? All right.
I
Thank
just
you so
want to put
much.
it out just in case, because what's going on in Wrightwood with this upcoming storm, I may leave earlier just based on phone calls. I just want to give you guys a heads up. So if you see me walking out, that's what it's for. So
Absolutely, no
all right,
problem.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Holman, you're up.
Good evening to all. I think a belated Happy New Year. I don't know how long I can say that, but I guess I just said it here in February, so please know it's from my heart there. Good to see all of you. It's been a bit of time since I've been in here, and I'm going to just stop and say welcome aboard to our new sergeant here, Sergeant Trevor Mlinzik. I had the good fortune, as did some of us, get to meet him not too long ago, so looking forward to your good work that you've already been doing, and thanks as always in advance for serving this community. I think you've already grown to know it's a wonderful place to be, live. And so to that end, what I'm going to share with all of you, I think since the last time I was here, Measure J, you might be very aware of that if you're a resident here, Measure J officially has passed. And one of our core values is fiscal responsibility in Snowline Joint Unified School District. And there's a belief statement in there that talks about ourselves being good stewards of all the funds that are sent our way. We get funds from of course, the state level and the federal level. But this is the first time in 6 tries here that we've ever passed one, and so we take this very, very seriously. I want to say thank you to all who have who have been part of this. I know some of you right up in front of me have really supported that at extreme lengths, and so grateful. But when we just talk about moving forward here, $70.6 million that is going to be coming to the Snowline Joint Unified School District to upgrade our facilities. Some of you may know we have facilities that are more than 80 years old, and our newest school is over 20 years old. And so this is just a real honor for ourselves to be able to do that work. And what do we have? We have 8 for quite a bit of time now, and this is really attributed to people prior to me. We have 8 plans that are in the department, or not the department, excuse me, the Division of State Architecture that are approved, that will be able to now move forward over the next 2, 3, 4 years as a series of bonds are sold for ourselves to upgrade those 8 facilities. And boy, is that going to be a real powerful experience. And because Proposition 2 passed on the ballot, we'll be able to get 60% of those funds back to us. So what an exciting time for us. That $70 million will be able to be accelerated up to $150, $60, $70 million worth of improvements based on that free money, if you will, that'll come to us from Proposition 2. So we're just very excited because what I want to share with you as I kind of exit out of this and let you get back to your meeting is we take very seriously the idea of Snowline Partnerships, that we're partners with so many individuals and entities. And you've been a huge supporter of our efforts over time. Mr. Don Bartz right over there a little bit ago called me, I should say. We had a conversation about problems over here. And we always want to make our police department available. You have a wonderful sheriff's department here too. That's just an example where we need to be doing our part to support you here. And I just want to thank you over time for doing that, because our facilities are just that. They're our facilities, not Snowline's facilities, our facilities. All of you who live in here are residents, are taxpayers. So please know we're thrilled to be able to upgrade our facilities so that our facilities can still be used free of charge to all the nonprofit individuals in service of this community being better by virtue of serving the residents in the best of ways. So we're just thrilled. I can go on forever. Rebecca, you've heard me go on forever, and I apologize for that. I probably go on too long, but I just want to say from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. We're going to absolutely take seriously being great stewards of the money. So we appreciate that greatly. If you have kids at home and are asking about a snow day tomorrow, we'll be up early again as always, right? Or it's going to be maybe a rain day, as we've talked about before. We'll see. The weather is going to be challenging. Please know that I know our drive will happen early in the morning. We'll see what happens, and I'm going to go back here pretty soon and kind of check on that too. So any questions, I'll be happy to answer though too.
Yeah.
Do we have a time frame for the committee that will be created to oversee?
Yeah, thanks for saying that. That committee's called an oversight committee. It's formed of 7 individuals, residents, and there are specific duties. And that time frame in the next 2 months, a little over 2 months, I should say, forgive me, there specifically by April 22nd. So you're going to see information coming out after our next board meeting, which is February 25th. And so we'll form an oversight committee. The role of that, just real quickly, is to ensure that we're using the funds as intended, as was approved by the voters. And so 7 individuals, 7 residents will be chosen to be part of that. We've got a subcommittee that will be taking part in that real soon. So thanks for asking about that.
Good question.
Yeah, great question.
Not a question, but please pass on thanks to whoever was able to get that grant for those emergency kits that were distributed to all of our schools. I know I'm hoping we never have to use them, but if we do, we appreciate having them.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, for sure. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, but thank you so very much.
Since you just walked in, did you have a public comment on anything? Because I don't want to skip you.
Thank you very much. No, I do not.
Okay, great. Thank you. No worries. All right, so we will move on to agenda item 3, consent items. Does anyone have anything they would like to pull? No? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar, or consent items.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. No matters removed. Number 5, no presentation, so we will move on to agenda item 6A, discussion and possible adoption of reserve schedule for 24-25. Mr. Bartz.
Thank you. Ms. Lawrence is going to present the reserve schedule tonight.
Yes, you have before you an annual item that comes before the board. The schedule is developed after the final audit is completed and brought back to the board for approval based on the audited figures that are set forth in the resolution. The most recent resolution was passed last year, and the change in reserves is $719,000 over the prior year. And that's because we've had some additional assets.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Yes.
I had a question. So I see on the reserves that we have utilized some funds back in, I think it was 16. And I understand that over time we'll get, I don't know if reimbursed is the right word, but is there a schedule for that? Is there something on the
Yes,
books?
you're talking about the water rights acquisition project and the
For
water rights
RAP.
funding that
Yeah.
we borrowed from the reserves.
Right.
Yeah, it was over a 10-year period, but.
10-year, okay.
Yeah, but it's, there's been a couple times we've had to skip it because we didn't have the money to do.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that's the plan.
10 years.
Most of it.
Okay, any other questions, comments? No? All right. I will entertain a motion.
I'll motion to approve 6A for the possible adoption of the reserve schedule for 24-25.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, the motion passes. Moving on to 6B, discussion and possible action regarding seeking a request for proposal to drill well 18 and request for proposal to drill wells 18 and number 16 simultaneously. Mr. Bartz.
Thank you. I'm going to have Sean Wright present this, and then we will answer questions because it's quite a lengthy process here on this project.
Thank you, Mr. Burtz. Back in June of 2024, the board approved our budget, which included several capital improvement projects, including the construction of a new well under the hexavalent chromium, line 1 last night, mitigation projects, along with several other projects, $450,000 to profile well number 14, and $150,000 to equip well number 12 with a pneumatic packer. We've already done that profiling work. We know what needs to be done and the amount of production capacity we will give up. In anticipation of, but a new MCL by California Department of Public Health has been adopted as of October 1st, 2024. So again, we do have till October 1st of 2027 for a district our size to comply. The sum of these projects is much costlier than the original $17 million we thought we were going to construct that blending pipeline with down to the dairy. In December of 2024, the district acquired that 2.02 acre parcel on Beakley Road, which is going to be home of the future well number 18. The district entered into a professional service agreement with Tom Dodson and Associates to complete CEQA, which is ongoing currently. The pipeline design and plans will be completed by district staff, and the site will be topographically surveyed with the proposed pipeline alignment in the next few months. During the planning phase of well 15 several years ago, a backup plan was developed in case we hit a duster. We drilled and unfortunately we didn't find water. We wanted to have a backup plan. So when we did that, we ran and developed plans for a secondary well, well 16, on that 40-acre parcel the district owns by the fill station there off of Sheep Creek. This would not require a transmission pipeline because there is a 10-inch distribution main out front of the property capable of serving reservoirs 1A and 1C, much like well 8 does currently. So there's an altitude valve, and when that well fills 1A, or the tanks on Sheep Creek at the railroad tracks, that water then automatically gets pumped over to Wilson Ranch. Staff would like to further investigate the cost-benefit breakdown of drilling 2 well boreholes versus 1 well borehole, which would save us on the mobilization, materials, and demobilization, economy and scale. Instead of doing 1, we'll do 2. By requesting proposals for both options, staff can demonstrate whether the potential savings exist with that economy and of scale. Since CEQA is not yet complete for well number 18, the RFPs will be requested without CEQA mitigation measures, such as well 15 had the tortoise barrier. Well number 15 is going to serve as the template for the depth of the construction, the type of materials. Using this analog, the cost to drill the pilot hole, to ream, and to case is about $110,000 or greater, given the inflation since well 15, since it's been a couple of years. An additional $480,000 is estimated to equip the new well with a pump, motor, and variable frequency drive. So basically what staff is asking, and I know there's a lot in that, I'm not asking to spend any money at this time. All I'm requesting is I'm allowed to seek proposals for 1 well and 2 wells simultaneously to demonstrate the cost savings of that economy of scale, to better have a handle on our forecasts and our budgets as we move forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions, because I know there's a lot there, and kind of tying in with our chromium mitigation from last night, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, start down there.
Okay, I got a few. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate the presentation. It looks like a good approach. Anytime you drill a well, there's a potential that you may not get any water, or you may drill into constituents that you don't want to have in your well, such as arsenic or any other of the 500 that are regulated constituents. So with that being said, how have you looked at other approaches besides just well drilling and blending and pipeline? You know, what other options do we have, or is this what you've settled on as far as the final route that you want to take in order to mitigate the future pending regulation with hexavalent chromium?
I very much thank you for bringing this up. We did receive our budgetary estimates. We investigated a treatment technology. It's called rolled up regeneration. They tried to eliminate as much of the treatment plant around ion exchange as possible. It is a strong based ion exchange, which means salt, because in our state we're not allowed to use certain types of acid to rejuvenate the resin. So they truck mounted all of this, and it's called a roll up regen. So it's 2 vessels that house resin. If you look at it under a microscope, it's like a ball of yarn. This ball of yarn absorbs things such as hexavalent chromium, arsenic, vanadium, you name it. The 3 wells in question that are located around well 12 would all be piped centrally into a treatment. They do have sulfates, and unfortunately those sulfates would preload the beds, so that's counted against. Imagine this as a sponge. A sponge is capable of absorbing so much. It absorbs what you want and absorbs some things we don't want. Sulfates it's a happy byproduct it's absorbing, but it's still counted against the overall volume or bed volume. The estimated budget capital that this process would require would be a $1.25 million investment to just construct the facilities. The operating cost is estimated at $1,088,000 a year without sulfate oxidization to mitigate the sulfates. Now that's assumed with 24/7 operations, so right off the bat, I know that number's intimidating. Cut it in half. These would become highly seasonal, so we would run these wells only in summer, but we're still looking at about $500,000 ongoing O&M. That pays for a new well in 4 years. But you're absolutely right, and I caution anybody on this. Anytime you put a bit in the ground, there is a risk. You might find something you really want, and you might find something you really don't want. There's the risk of you drill a dry hole. There's the risk of, I have seen on a 1 acre parcel, one well did 600 gallons a minute, and the well, not 200 foot away, did 6,500 gallons a minute. The risk is always inherent. And with that being said, that kind of segues us into one. There's a third bigger option out there, if you will. In the parcel, or the dairy that the district purchased some years ago, there's existing wells that have been pumped, and we have done some limited sampling. The aquifer was not stressed, but to a limited degree. We did like what we saw. We saw up to 1,350 gallons a minute. of 2.5 part per billion hexavalent chromium, kind of a home run. It does carry its own risks, but less than drilling. That would require, and I call it Project 4 for 1, because what's down there is 4 wells. That would require 5.8 miles, something to the tune of 30,600 foot of 12-inch ductile iron to service those wells. The holes exist. We liken back, again, I'm just going to use well 15 as an analog. It's $1,060,000 when we drilled that hole. That's just to put the hole in the ground. So I think I'm reasonable at $1.1 million or more today. So you're already 4.4 million in theory dollars ahead of the game by doing that, because the holes exist, they have a known production quantity and a known water quality. Albeit water quality can change, and it has been some years. It would be my recommendation, if we were even inclined to look at that route, would be to test pump the wells. Especially the 2 larger ones that are on site. You would not risk, it would not be advisable to risk investing this kind of capital, and we're going to get to that one in just a second, to run a pipeline without having a guaranteed water quality and water quantity. The question would be, how much money are we talking about for a pipeline on that scale? When I ran the budgetary numbers, 12-inch ductile iron was going for about $52 a linear foot. It actually has come down a little bit. I've also talked to a pipeline manufacturer. If we were to buy, again, the power of economy and scale, you could look for about a 5% discount off that $52 per linear foot by purchasing that kind of quantity at once. And again, we're going to use well 15 as an analog. It's just a baseline. When we did that, we installed 5,280 feet in about 16 working days. So if we extrapolate that out to the 30,000, we would estimate staff currently could do that in about 60 plus or minus working days. There's one thing that stands in the way. There's a Kinder Morgan high pressure transcontinental gas line in the way. There's going to be a lot of hand digging around that. So that might take us a couple of days to get across that. But other than that, it's virtually wide open. Depending on how many valves and hydrants were put along that transmission line, you're looking at a price tag of $2.179 million to $2.4 million just for materials. That buys us the materials and rents the necessary equipment to install that pipeline. So that's an option that I always try and look as far outside the box as ever possible. That's why we investigated the ion exchange technology, the Project 4 for 1 or a pipeline route, and or the options we have before us, which is we drill a couple of wells closer here in town on properties we already own. And I know that's a lot to throw at you, and I just got these budgetary numbers yesterday, so it's too late to incorporate in the packet. And I promise these will be in the next committee and board packets so we can all see them and review them. What really inhibits us for ion exchange is that sulfate. It's killing us on bed volumes, and that's really driving that O&M cost forward. And it's unfortunate, but ion exchange does have some added benefit if there's constituents of concern that we might not have MCLs on today.
Pre-emerging, yeah.
We might tomorrow.
All right.
I wish I had a magic crystal ball. I don't.
Does all of our wells have the same sulfate levels throughout the basin, or is it just a few select?
Unfortunately, it's just the ones that are needing treatment today. Virtually everywhere else are non-detect on sulfates. There's a couple of different constituents at a couple of different wells, but presently those don't have maximum contaminant levels, only secondary health standards.
Yeah.
So not on the radar. And then while we're on the subject, I know PFAS has become a huge thing,
PFAS,
especially PFOA, PFAS. Happy to report to the board, we've gotten all of our results back. We are negative across the board. So we don't have to worry about PFOA or PFAS also hindering those bed volumes, just sulfates at these particular wells.
Yeah. Could you just give a brief explanation of PFAS, PFOA?
PFAS and PFOAs found in many of the textiles we all have on tonight. You have a waterproof jacket on. That jacket has PFAS in it. If you wore an aluminum-based deodorant tonight, I guarantee you have more PFAS than is found in the atmosphere. It is found in tens of thousands of products we use every day.
Yeah.
Every sampler and every manager is probably going to have their own opinion. I know when my water quality technician samples for PFAS and PFOA, he's not allowed to wear deodorant. When, interesting enough, one of our travel blanks, or it's a bottle that you open for 5 seconds. You don't fill it with water, it's a travel blank. It captures the atmosphere so we can measure that versus what's in the water. When we did the UCMR events a couple months ago, one of our travel blanks got a 300% hit on the background PFAS, but our water was still non-detect. So it was in the air. And ironically, it's at one of the sites highest in the mountain. I can't explain where it came from. Perhaps somebody's perfume came through, somebody's deodorant. But again, to reiterate, we are completely non-detect across the board for PFAS, PFOA, and the other handful, 10 or so, that they've decided to establish MCLs on.
It's a forever chemical. It doesn't break down in the environment, and that's the concern. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize. I know this is a ton of information, and I'm happy to answer any and all questions.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment too. About a year and a half ago, we were talking about the potential for the project for the line going down to the dairy. And at that time, that was the number one item we wanted to look at. We weren't sold on that, but I want to thank Sean for doing a good job looking at all of our options. With the project that's going to happen down at the dairy with Republic, they're going to need fire flow protection and dust suppression, and it basically we're going to be providing water to the dairy site. We did maintain ownership of the wells and easements off of the site. So one of the things that we've done is I've met with Republic a couple of times. Sean and staff have met with them to talk to them about what is best for them to provide the water to the site. In order to have their fire flow protection that they need down there, they're going to have a boosted system. So they're going to have a lot of power to the site, pressure boosters, storage tanks, and everything else. So we have broached the subject of participating in a line, which could cut down the costs of a line down to the dairy if we decide to go that way. So with what we're asking tonight, or what Sean's asking, to just kind of see what the cost of the wells would be if we bid them simultaneously, putting into the mix well 14, packing, doing the packing that off for chromium 6. We have money set aside for that. There might be a possibility to where it could be affordable to do that, and a lot closer to our budget than it would initially look. So we are looking at all options still, and we'd like to get those prices, do more homework, and then run it back through the engineering committee and report back to the board on what we think a good plan would be to serve the district for the next 20, 30 years.
Okay, Gina, any questions?
So I remember the presentation many years ago when we were talking chromium locally, and that was the reason for the dairy. But it seemed to me that there was a huge cost to get the water up here. So how would that equate into, or have you already equated that into it?
Yeah, let me go ahead and take a stab at that. When we looked at it initially, the dairy was purchased for the water rights. We knew the wells could be valuable in the future, but we did want to buy the rights, which saves us probably close to $800 to $1 million a year, just not having to lease water from Mojave Water Agency. The initial project that we looked at back then was $17 million, and that was running a pipeline from the dairy over to our wells 10, 11, 12 over on the LA County line, which was a further distance by miles, I think about 4 miles further than our system exists now with the new well 15, and a blending facility. So you had to have lines from the wells to, and I believe we have 2 tanks that we had to have, 2 storage tanks that we had to construct to pump the water into the tanks, blend it, and then boost it into the system. So at that point, that looked like the best option, but when they put the chromium 6 moratorium, they put the moratorium on that, we were able to take the time and look at all of the other options, and there's a lot of things that have happened since then. We have better knowledge of our system with the test pumping that we've done. Now we know what our costs actually are, but that project was much larger than this.
Okay.
When we do profile a well, we liken it to a straw. We set a test pump and we send down a tool that looks like a propeller blade, and that tells us where our inflows are coming into the well. Some are higher, some are lower, so it's not lateral, right? We have peaks and valleys, if you will. And then we send down a tool that looks like a fancy tube with a vacuum in it, and we take samples at where we're really getting that influx of water. And from that, we can determine what our effluent, or how much water it's going to produce and at what concentration of the constituent. So when we do profile, and well 12 and well 14 are these two figures we've given, we would have to cut back on the amount of water that they can produce. So as a district, we can do that, but we have to make up that sum of water somewhere else, or wet water. So if we were to give up, and well 12, for example, does about 700 gallons a minute, to make it work, we'd have to give up about 500 gallons a minute. That's a whole nother well. So we need to source or secure that additional 500 to meet our max day demand. So don't ever fall into a Title 22 situation to where we're placed on a meter moratorium. We always want to make sure we're meeting that max day demand.
Yeah, according to Title 22, you've got to have ability to meet max day demand under fire flow conditions with your two largest sources out of your availability to produce water, whether it's through a treatment plant or through a well.
Correct, and well 12 happens to be our second largest. So we started looking outside the box. What are the options available? Treatments, first and foremost, can we fix what's there and keep the flows we have today? We can, but the ongoing O&M costs would pay for a new well in about 4 years. So that seems like not the best viable option for us today. And again, this evening, we're not asking to spend any money. All I'm asking is to allow staff to go seek proposals on what is the cost savings if we were to drill 2 wells instead of drilling 1 well. Do we take the 450 plus the 150 we have scheduled for well 14? So we have $450,000 for well 14 and $150,000 to fix well 12. So combine $600,000. Is it best that we walk away from well 14? I'm not going to use the term abandon because that does carry some other implications and expenditures. Stop utilizing well 14 and spend those resources on, do we secure and drill a second well 16, or is it best to run that pipeline down and pick up those 4 wells? But I need to have a handle and a fixed cost on, again, in the last 3 years since we've drilled, I believe we went out to bid for well 15 about 3 years ago. Since then, inflation's gone rampant. I can give you my best educated guess at the cost today, but I really would like to have firm, hard numbers on that. Market volatility on materials and labor is so up and down. Plus, back when we drilled well 15, there was about a 12-month period you had to queue in line. So if you signed a contract today, you weren't drilling till this time next year. I want to have a hard handle on what do those figures look like, and then we can come back to the board and proceed what's best for PPH CSD.
Good. Deborah?
Included with that, can we also include testing of those wells down at the old dairy farm? At the same time, could we be doing that so we can know the numbers?
Those figures I gave you did have a provision to test those wells.
Okay, so that's already
That
tied
was
in.
included in those numbers as well as the rental equipment. That was kind of an all-in. And those numbers are very tight. We actually ran those 2 months ago. The market's still cooling off on materials a little bit. I'm very confident in those numbers.
Yeah.
I would like to have all the data we could on the table when we do it.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one of the things we would do before we guide the board in a certain direction on how we want to do that, drilling new wells or using the dairy, would be to do some additional test pumping down at the dairy and stress the aquifer, because we want to know for sure before we commit to a project that size that it is going to work exactly like we hope.
Okay, good.
I'm good.
Chuck?
Thank you.
Good. Okay. All right, so is this a motion or just giving him permission to continue?
Yeah,
on?
I think a consensus would be fine
Consensus?
to go out for that.
Okay. We have.
Or you know what? Let's go ahead and vote.
Yeah?
We'll cover
Go ahead and
ourselves
do
that
it.
way, yeah.
All right.
I'll move the item.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Perfect. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Motion passes. Excellent work, Sean. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to item 6C, update on district projects.
George, this is going to be your moment to update.
Thank you, Mr. Bartz. I'll start with the Civic Center project. All but the landscape plans have been approved by the county, which is, it's been stressful considering that we've had to work with them on the multiple projects on this site with the enhancement and the park and our Civic Center project about a year ago when we went through the FEMA changes. Staff will bring this item, we'll bring an item to the board at the next meeting to solicit construction management services. And then we'll bring that back to the board for a recommendation. Any questions on the Civic Center? I think that we hit a lot on what was pending in the past. We're kind of there, so I could sleep a little bit better on the Civic Center project. The Phelan Park expansion, we are waiting for the approval of the NOD by the Board of Supervisors. It is on their agenda, it should be on their agenda for approval at the next meeting, which is the last Tuesday of the month. Once we have that NOD, the Notice of Determination, for that 14-acre project, then we'll move forward with meeting with with Fish and Wildlife, their environmental scientist who has been assigned to this project, along with RCA, who is the environmental engineer that prepared the plan to kind of come up with the mitigation for our project. We did meet with another option for mitigation versus the paying per tree, the 1,972 trees that we have on that 14-acre site. And we're going to protect as many as we can for our park project, which we would consider a demonstration garden. There is another option that was introduced to us. Mr. Bartz met with Jill Bales with Transition Habitat Conservancy, and she got us in touch with the National Mitigation Bank Acquisition and Planning Organization. And there is an exchange for Joshua trees in Puzzle Canyon, which is just on the other side of the county line in LA County. We met with them last week, and we provided them with all the information on the project, Joshua tree locations, and they kind of returned with a response that this could be a cost savings for the district if we go this route. We just need a better design plan for them to determine what that mitigation is. We will introduce this as an option with the environmental scientists with Fish and Wildlife as another option for mitigation versus paying the fees and obtaining that incidental take permit. But we're getting there. So hopefully in March we can then initiate that meeting with Fish and Wildlife and RCA, and we can get that taken care of. As I had mentioned before, Fish and Wildlife are revising the plan, the Conservation Act plan for the Western Joshua tree. We're in that window where we're still on the existing mitigation, and I believe it will be like July, the early part of July, before they potentially approve the new plan, which is not really feasible for the district. So we're a little bit more comfortable in saying that we're still within that safe zone on the current plan. Any questions on the Phelan expansion project? The ARPA Phelan Park Enhancement Project. This is the pickleball court, community garden, and the ADA improvements for the park. Staff did meet with legal counsel regarding the review of the bid documents that they were reviewed in early December. Kennedy will put eyes on the bid documents here real soon to get final approval on it. But just yesterday, the county approved the last of the improvement plans. So now we have everything in hand. So we're ready to kind of go out and solicit bids. It was in November that the board approved staff to solicit bids for the project. The staff will then meet with our consultants to finalize the packet, pending Kennedy's final blessing of the bid documents to publicly notice the project for solicitation. With that, I have no more to report on those 3 current projects. If you have any questions, I'm here to help.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
All right, we will move on to added item 6D, acceptance of the draft capital plan.
Thank you, Madam President. The board met last night at a special board workshop to approve or to review the enterprise capital improvement plans and the governmental projects for the next year. And with that, last night it was on the agenda to review and accept that. The board did review that last night, and tonight I'm asking for the board to accept the draft capital plan as presented last night, and we will have copies included with the minutes.
Okay. Any questions before we move on to that? No? Okay. I will motion to approve the draft capital plan.
I'll second that.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. All right, moving on to 7 committee reports, starting with engineering.
Yeah, I have nothing to report. We met last month, and I reported out at the following board meeting, and
Correct.
we'll meet again this month.
All right. Finance?
We met on January 21st, and we're scheduled to have a special meeting on April 8th.
Great, thank you. Legislative?
We meet next month. We meet next month.
All right. Park and Rec, we didn't need our February meeting, so we will meet again in April, March, or it doesn't matter, March or April. We're good. It'll show up on the calendar. And waste and recycling.
Yes, we met last month, and we'll meet again in March.
All right, great. All right, 8, staff and general managers report. Anything to add?
I have nothing to add tonight.
Okay. Okay, we will move on to directors' reports. Greg?
I have nothing to report.
Gina?
I have nothing to report.
Deborah?
I attended the ribbon cutting for the trauma unit at St. Mary's last week. They started doing rescues in July, and they've already rescued several thousand. They have a helicopter pad there that permanently has a helicopter on call. They are not part of Mercier, they're part of REACH, and REACH is different than Mercier because all of their pilots are instrument certified. So that is a major benefit to our area.
Nice.
And so I was there for the ribbon cutting. That's it.
All right. Chuck?
Nothing to report?
All right. And I have nothing new to report either, so we will move on to correspondence. Ms. Williams?
Yes. The first thing I have is we received an email from one of the schools for our Eco Hero program. They went out to, I think it was Heritage, Heritage, and they had an assembly over there, and they were just submitting their response on it, that they absolutely loved it, and it's a great message and wonderful experience for the kids, and that they appreciate that we provide this for them. So they included the email in here and a couple of pictures from the assembly.
Nice.
And then after that, we just have some of our monthly flyers, how to pay your bill online through your bank, how to find a silent leak in your house, and then our upcoming cleanup and free tire date on March 8th at CR&R.
Great, thank you. All right, number 11, review of action items. Were there any prior meeting action items?
There were none.
And current meeting?
There were none besides to add the items from the acceptance of the draft plan.
All right. And then setting the agenda for next board meeting, February 26th. Does anyone have anything they would like to add? No? All right. So with that, we are going to recess to close session at 5:44 p.m.